You're watching the Daily Climate Show on Sky News. On today's programme, better late than never, the much-delayed Environment Bill, which sets binding targets to tackle climate change, is included in the Queen's speech. We find out why 6 young people from Portugal are taking more than 30 countries to court over climate change. And growing solutions, how reforestation efforts are paying off around the world. Hello and welcome to the UK's only daily climate news show, where we track the changes happening to our world right now and meet those coming up with the solutions. And we aim to take you to the heart of the climate crisis, explain the data driving the changes that are already affecting us, but also show you just how far we've come. Now, the Queen's speech today set out the government's legislative agenda for the year ahead, and there was a clear focus on climate issues. It included the long-delayed Environment Bill, which will set legally binding environmental targets and commitments to restoring nature and biodiversity. The Lifetime Skills Guarantee is expected to give better access to education and training, something welcomed by green business groups who warn that the transition to net zero could otherwise be hampered by skills shortages in the future. But proposals for the planning system could prove controversial if fast-track developments don't fully consider environmental impacts or promote green building practices. Well, our science correspondent Thomas Moore joins me now. Welcome to you, Thomas. And there's been a long wait for the Environment Bill, hasn't there? But what's in it?
Well, it's the third Queen's speech, can you believe, that it has appeared in. Work started back in July 2018, but it has been so badly delayed, held over from the last parliamentary session because the government said there wasn't enough time to debate it properly during the COVID crisis. Well, what is it? Well, it is the biggest shake-up to green regulation in several decades. It sets out the environmental protections for the UK now that EU rules no longer apply. The government says that it will improve air pollution, water quality, waste management, the climate and biodiversity. But green groups are concerned. They believe that it doesn't set tough enough targets. They're too long-term to drive the immediate action that is needed during this nature crisis. They also fear that the watchdog, the Office for Environmental Protection in the bill, lacks both independence and teeth. Now, all this is happening during the year of the big climate summit in Glasgow, of course, when the world's eyes are on the UK. And green groups fear that the government will fail to take enough environmental leadership in such an important year, and that will be hugely embarrassing for the country. For it to stand a chance of being passed in Parliament in time, work needs to start next month. It is that urgent.
Thomas, thank you. Let's take a look now at some of the day's other climate news. And the government has announced £12 million in new funding to support developing countries to better prepare for and respond to climate-related disasters. The fund will help deal with the effects of extreme weather, such as droughts and floods, as well as predicting climate events such as heat waves. Ministerial departments are being urged to use sustainable laptops to reduce their carbon footprint. Circular computing estimates emissions would be cut by more than 196,000 tonnes over the next 14 years if refurbished laptops were used instead of new ones. The sustainable IT firm says it would also save the government almost £128 million. Trees are being used as pollution barriers to protect people exercising in London. Drinks company Tenzing has begun planting trees in highly polluted areas of the city, popular amongst runners and cyclists. The areas have been identified using Tenzing's Clean Air Tracker and pollution data from Imperial College London. Most people in Britain want single-use coffee cup lids banned immediately to reduce plastic waste. A new survey has found 73% of adults would support a ban on plastic lids, and nearly 2/3 say they'd pay more for an eco-friendly alternative. 2.5 billion takeaway coffee cups are thrown away each year, and only 1 in 400 of those are recycled. And an artist has planted a ghost forest in New York to raise awareness about deforestation. Maya Lin has created the art installation using 49 dead cedars that were originally grown in the Pine Barrens, an ecosystem on the Atlantic coast. Maya hopes the exhibit will show people the devastating impact climate change has on the natural world. Now, last year saw a record surge in global renewable power, according to the International Energy Agency. It found the renewables industry grew at its fastest pace since 1999, with the delivery of renewable energy projects increasing by 45%. Now, by far the biggest increases were in solar capacity and wind turbines. And you can see here on our data dashboard the real-time power mix in Great Britain. And we can see that 43% of electricity today is coming from fossil fuels. We've got 38% there from renewable sources and 19% coming from nuclear. And that's actually a marked difference from yesterday when we saw 60% of electricity coming from renewable sources. Now, who is responsible for climate change is hard to pin down. Individuals, governments and businesses all play a part in causing global warming and what can be done about it in the future. But for 6 young people, they think that countries aren't doing enough to fight the climate crisis and are taking them to court over it. Following the 2017 wildfires in Portugal, the group took their case to the European Court of Human Rights, arguing not enough is being done to keep global temperatures below 1.5 degrees. And now the charity Save the Children has intervened in the case. Well, here to explain more is Ulrika Cilliers, Director of Policy and Advocacy at Save the Children. Welcome to you. So why is Save the Children intervening in this case? What do you hope to achieve?
Thanks, Anna. We are intervening mainly for 2 reasons. Children are by far the hardest hit by the climate crisis. They are hit in so many ways, on their health, on their education, on what they can eat and what not. And it's not just about the children today, but it's also the future of the generations to come. And we want to make sure that when the court are ruling on this case, they have as much information as possible on how the climate crisis are hitting children and their rights, so that they can take as an informed decision as possible. Secondly, and also importantly, we are really, really inspired to see children like the Portuguese children taking action and to be part of decisions and formulating how the climate crisis should be taken forward. So just the fact that these children are there and they are taking action with the court is something that we think are worth supporting, and making sure that children can be part of these discussions and formulating decisions.
Many countries would argue we are setting targets to reduce our emissions, we're laying out our policies. So what would your counter-argument to them be?
Countries need to do more, and they need to listen to children and take action on what children are saying they need in order to mitigate the impacts of the climate crisis. So we hope that by intervening in this case and supporting this case, the court has an opportunity to put a spotlight on the impact of the climate crisis on children and their rights, and hopefully also to push governments to accelerate their action in this area.
And do you think litigation is the best way to do that? How effective is the legal process in forcing government policy change?
Of course, litigation is just one part of the solution, right? And one part of what we can do to push for more action in this area. But we know from around the world that litigation can be a very effective way of putting, again, as I said before, putting spotlight on the issues that need to be addressed, and to push governments to do more and to do better. And it is crucial that at this time and leading up to COP26 in Glasgow, that we really make sure that governments are there looking at what needs to happen in order for children and their futures to be protected.
Ulrika Cilliers, thanks very much indeed. Now, we often hear about deforestation and the devastating impact it has on our planet. And while huge areas of forest are disappearing, there is hope. Nearly 60 million hectares of natural forests have grown back since 2000. That's around 22 billion trees. And they have the potential to store the equivalent of 5.9 gigatons of CO2, more than the annual emissions of the whole of the United States. And it's all due to different types of of reforestation happening around the world. Well, let's bring in Will Baldwin-Cantello, who's Director of Nature-Based Solutions at WWF. Welcome to you. So I'm reading that you found that an area the size of France has regrown naturally in the last 20 years. That sounds pretty encouraging.
It is encouraging, and it's great news. It's good to demonstrate the power of forests to be able to regrow, given the space to do so. And by doing this, we're providing a great solution in the fight against climate change. What we need to do, though, now is to make sure that we can secure these forests in the long term. We can't take them for granted. And of course, deforestation is continuing at pace around these forests. So it's important to secure these forests for the long term.
Well, yes, and we're talking about natural forest regeneration. How is that different from actively planted forests?
Well, in this study, which is the first of its kind conducted by Trillion Trees, we tried to distinguish between plantation forests and natural forests, which have either grown spontaneously all by themselves or perhaps have had some assistance through enrichment planting or otherwise. And by doing that, we're able to talk about the success of efforts to restore natural forests, which provide greater carbon benefits, greater biodiversity benefits, and actually are cheaper than planted forests. And of course, they store their carbon in the long term, whereas plantations, you have a harvesting cycle that you harvest the wood and then uses them in products. If short-lived, that carbon then returns to the atmosphere.
Will Baldwin-Cantello, thanks very much indeed. Coming up on tomorrow's Daily Climate Show, I'll be speaking to the climate activist Luisa Neubauer, who's one of the main organisers of the Fridays for Future school strike in Germany. You can catch that here on Sky News at the same time and on our social channels and website. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.